Vienna often appears in every ranking as one of the best cities in the world to live in. It is clean, organized, full of culture, safe, and has that European capital look that should cost a fortune. But then comes the part that almost no one expects. Living in Vienna is much cheaper than it seems. In some ways, it is even cheaper than countries that are far from the European standard. And that always causes surprise. How can such a sought-after, touristy, and highly praised city manage to keep prices so low in areas that, in the rest of the continent, have become a nightmare? Why does Vienna escape the rule that has made so many capitals too expensive? And above all, what did it do so differently to achieve this? That's what we're going to find out now. In today's Bello Mundo, we will understand how Vienna became this affordable capital where, curiously, your wallet breathes easier than in most of Europe. Number 1. The postcard. Vienna has always had a special place in the imagination of those who love to travel or simply enjoy cinema. It is the kind of city that appears in Hollywood productions and European films. Anyone who has seen the movie Before Sunrise remembers that photographic, calm Vienna, which seems tailor-made for nighttime strolls and endless conversations. Quiet streets, trams passing slowly, and a city that seems to have been designed to be admired scene by scene. Those who have seen Mission Impossible, Rogue Nation have a completely different but equally powerful memory. The Vienna Opera House, immense, illuminated, imposing, the setting for one of the most memorable sequences in the film. And this combination creates an automatic impression. We imagine palaces, elegant cafes, opera, classical music, impeccable old buildings, all with that atmosphere of a wealthy capital, where every corner seems to demand a more generous wallet. And that's precisely why many people are surprised when they discover that living here doesn't match the label that the visuals suggest. Vienna looks like a city that charges a lot for everything, but the actual price does not match this image. It's almost a reverse culture shock. People expect to find the same standard of living as in cities like Paris, Milan, or even Berlin, and end up realizing that Viennese life works in a completely different way. The atmosphere is that of a large metropolis, but the cost is more reminiscent of a much less inflated place. While many cities have seen the cost of living skyrocket, Vienna has managed to remain predictable, stable, and in many ways, surprisingly affordable. But how did it achieve this in a scenario where almost everyone else has done the opposite? The answer starts with housing. Number 2. Housing. If there is one item that weighs heavily on the pocketbook in any big city, it is rent. And in this regard, Europe has become a clear example of how things can get out of control. In Spain and Portugal, for example, renting an apartment has become almost an emotional marathon. Even those who have the money to pay months of rent in advance have to wait in line, face disproportionate demands, and still run the risk of losing the place at the last minute. In Spain, there have been landlords asking for 6 months' rent in advance, plus a security deposit, which can easily reach 14,000 euros. The situation has become so complicated that the New York Times even reported on young people living in makeshift camps in Ibiza because they simply couldn't find a place to live. And that's where Vienna completely breaks the mold. The Austrian capital realized early on that if it let the market alone dictate the direction of housing, it would inevitably fall into the same hole. So, back in the 1920s, the city took the wheel and began to build its own housing complexes. This period became known as Red Vienna, when the municipal government decided to tackle the post-war crisis by creating housing financed by taxes on luxury goods, such as champagne and horse racing. In the initial phase alone, 65,000 units were built. The results of this strategy are still visible today. More than half of the population lives in public or subsidized housing. The city owns about 220,000 apartments and also subsidizes another 200,000 managed by cooperatives, making Vienna the largest municipal property owner in Europe. And none of this looks like a slum. Some complexes are true works of architecture. The Karl Marx Hof, for example, is over a kilometer long and has become a tourist attraction due to its grandeur and Art Deco style. But the key point is the price. For those thinking of living there, whether studying, working, or just enjoying a season in Europe, the price of apartments is much more affordable than one would expect from a famous, touristy capital city with such a high quality of life. A furnished one-bedroom apartment in the center of Vienna costs on average between 800 and 1,000 euros per month. And if you choose neighborhoods a little further away, this price easily drops to less than 800 euros. We are talking about well-maintained properties with heating, good infrastructure, and often historic buildings that look like movie sets. Now compare that with other cities in the region. In Milan or Paris, the same apartment costs around 1,400 euros per month, almost double the price in Vienna. And if we compare it to Zurich, Switzerland, the difference is even more striking. A one-bedroom apartment in the center can cost over 2,000 euros per month. In practice, living in Zurich can cost 2.5 times more than living in Vienna. And the most interesting thing is that Vienna doesn't just offer lower rents. It offers stability. There, it is common to find long-term contracts, predictable rent reviews, and even cases of people paying around 590 euros for a two-bedroom apartment, just a few minutes from the center with no deposit and a contract that can last a lifetime, and even be passed on to their children. The effect of this is that rents do not skyrocket, supply does not disappear, and the city does not push anyone to the margins. Number 3. Good food and low bills. After rent, the second big question for anyone thinking of living abroad is, how much does it cost to eat well? And this is where Vienna debunks yet another myth. For a rich, organized capital city full of tourists, food prices are surprisingly low when compared to Western Europe. Competitiveness reports show that food in Austria is among the cheapest in the European Union. And this is evident in everyday life. Filling your shopping cart in Vienna hurts much less than in Paris, Oslo, or Zurich. At the market, basic items are priced favorably. A kilo of chicken breast usually costs around 15 euros, while in Zurich it easily exceeds 24. A dozen eggs costs around 4 euros and 50 cents, while in Switzerland it is close to 8 euros. Even simple products, such as milk, show the difference. In Vienna, a liter costs between 1 euro and 30 and 1 euro and 50. In cities like London or Geneva, the price is close to 2 euros. These small differences, when added up, make the grocery bill much lighter, and that changes the routine a lot. The city's markets have stable prices, the open-air markets are full of fresh produce, and the famous Naschmarkt is almost a postcard of local cuisine. You can find fruit, cheese, spices, and cold cuts at prices that make any Western European look twice. Local food production also helps keep prices under control. You don't get the feeling that everything has suddenly become expensive. And eating out is also affordable. A simple lunch, that honest executive dish, costs between 12 and 15 euros. In Paris or Rome, that same lunch is unlikely to cost less than 20 or 25. In Switzerland, then, there's no comparison. Zurich charges 30 euros or more for something equivalent. Even fast food shows the contrast. A combo at McDonald's in Vienna usually costs around 11 euros. In Switzerland, the same combo costs 20 euros. In other words, even when it comes to eating junk food, Vienna is easier on the pocketbook. And there's another detail that few people mention. Austria has high salaries, and unlike many countries, workers receive 14 salaries per year, with an additional one in the summer and another at the end of the year. This means that, proportionally, food weighs less on the Viennese budget than it would in countries with lower incomes. In practice, living in Vienna means being able to cook well at home without fear of the bill and still enjoy restaurants without turning it into an occasional luxury. Money goes further and life flows more smoothly. And with a full stomach and our pockets still reasonably full, let's move on to another area where Vienna excels: transportation. Number 4. Public transportation. Mobility is another area where Vienna teaches us how to save money without sacrificing quality. In many capitals around the world, just thinking about getting around makes your wallet cry. Expensive subways, sky-high gas prices, parking that's almost impossible to afford. But in Vienna, the logic is different. You can cross the entire city for less than the price of a cup of coffee. Public transportation here is considered one of the best in Europe. But what's most impressive is that it's also among the cheapest. The best example of this is the annual ticket. For 365 euros, you get unlimited access to the subway, trams, and buses for an entire year. That's right, €1 per day to travel throughout the city. To compare, just take a look at prices in other cities. In London, an annual subway pass can exceed 2,000 euros. In Paris, it's close to 900. Even in German cities like Munich or Berlin, the price easily exceeds 600. No major city the size of Vienna comes close to this symbolic price of 365 euros. And those who don't want an annual pass don't suffer either. A single ticket costs €2.40 and is valid for 80 minutes, with the right to change lines. In other words, you can take the subway, then a tram, then a bus, all with the same ticket. And that greatly changes the equation for those who live there or visit. And here, what also stands out is that the quality of transportation is top-notch. Efficient lines, schedules that are respected, integration between all modes of transportation. This means that many people simply do not own a car. No need to spend money on fuel, insurance, maintenance, or parking, and there's still time to spare. To top it off, Vienna also invests heavily in bike lanes and sidewalks. The city is flat, safe, and invites you to walk or cycle. If you buy a bike, most of your daily journeys can be done for free. Ultimately, the monthly cost of transportation for a typical Vienna resident is usually less than 50 euros. That's to get around the whole city in comfort. In other capitals, a day's taxi fare alone can be more expensive than that. It's real savings in your daily life. And when transportation costs little, you have more money left over to enjoy the best Vienna has to offer, such as art, leisure, and culture. And that's exactly where we're going now. Number 5. Leisure and culture within everyone's reach. Living well isn't just about being able to pay the bills. It's also about getting out of the house, having fun, and enjoying cultural life without having to do the math. And Vienna hits the mark on this point. The city breathes culture, but without making it a privilege for the few. We're talking about the capital of museums, concerts, historic cafes, and, of course, the opera. But contrary to what many people think, this whole package doesn't have to be expensive. Let's go back to the beginning of the video, when we mentioned Mission Impossible. That's right. The Vienna State Opera, which appears in those grandiose scenes, may seem inaccessible. But did you know that you can watch a show for only 10 or 15 euros? That's right. If you're willing to stand and buy a last-minute ticket, you can get into one of the most prestigious theaters in the world for the price of 2 beers. On certain dates, students pay even less. Tickets are available for 3 or 5 euros. This is the kind of thing that few cities in the world offer. And it's not just the opera. Museums also follow this democratic logic. Some have free admission on specific days. Others charge only 1 euro for special events. Even at full price, a museum in Vienna usually costs 8, at most 12 euros. In Paris or London, a similar ticket costs between 15 and 20. And those who are experiencing financial difficulties can still use the Kultur Pass, a cultural pass that gives free admission to dozens of institutions. In other words, no one is excluded from accessing art. Now, if you're looking for something more casual, a movie ticket in Vienna costs around 10 to 12 euros. In Switzerland, the same ticket can cost 30. And nightlife is also more pocket-friendly. A mug of local beer costs between 4 and 5 euros. This is much less than the 8 or 10 euros charged in Oslo or Zurich. At some nightclubs, there is no cover charge. When there is a charge, it rarely exceeds 15 euros. Anyone who has been to Ibiza or London knows that this is almost impossible there. In addition, the city has a lot of free leisure options, parks, squares, well-kept gardens, and even outdoor cultural events. In the summer, for example, there is the film festival at Rathausplatz. Just show up, sit in the square in front of City Hall, and watch concerts and operas on a giant screen. All for free. You can go with friends, drink local wine, and enjoy the night without breaking the bank. After this overview of the main daily expenses, it's easy to understand why Vienna has earned a reputation as the cheapest big city in Europe without giving up being one of the best to live in. None of this is a coincidence. There's no hidden trick. What exists are clear choices made over decades. Housing treated as a right, affordable transportation, public services that really work, fairly priced food, decent wages, and a culture that values inclusion over exclusion. When all of this comes together, a reality emerges that many people think is impossible. Vienna offers the chance to live well in the heart of developed Europe without paying the absurd prices that other capitals impose. And it's not just about saving money. Ultimately, Vienna shows that it is possible to live surrounded by culture, entertainment, and quality without turning it into an unattainable luxury. That's why, when the world measures quality of life, Vienna almost always comes out on top. Here, your money doesn't just buy things, it buys experiences. And that's it for today. Now I ask you, would you trade your country for a life in the capital of Austria? Tell us in the comments. If you enjoyed this tour of one of the most affordable destinations in Europe, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the bell. In the next video, we'll take you to another surprising corner of our Bello Mundo. See you then!